Westwood City Park was supposed to be a place for all, but today some were being told they didn't belong. Jordan Carter, a young activist, stood at the entrance, watching as a park official turned away a group of children. "You can't be here," the official said sternly, but Jordan wasn't about to let that happen. A woman in a sharp jacket crossed her arms. This park wasn't meant for outsiders. Jordan felt Mikey tug at his sleeve. "Mr. Carter, are we not allowed here?" The little boy's eyes were filled with uncertainty. Jordan knelt beside him, whispering, "Of course you are." But the park official only shook his head. "Rules are rules." Jordan had had enough. Pulling out his phone, he started live streaming. "These kids are being turned away. Not because of anything they did, but because of where they come from. If we allow this, what does that say about us?" The video spread like wildfire, and within minutes, people started arriving, some with books, others with snacks, all sitting down in solidarity. Mayor Evelyn Morales arrived, alerted by the growing attention. She watched the scene, then turned to the park official. This city was built for all its children, not just the privileged ones. She kneeled down, picking up Mikey's book and reading the first page aloud. A hush fell over the crowd, and one by one they sat down to listen. From that day on, Westwood City Park's Learning Circle became a beacon of inclusion. The city funded new programs, and no child was ever turned away again. As Jordan smiled, he watched Mikey, now more confident, stand before the group, reading his favorite story aloud. A week later, something surprising happened. A group of well-dressed teens from the prestigious Lincoln Academy arrived. "We saw the video," said Emily, a student council member. "We never thought about what it's like for kids who don't have access to places like this. We want to help." But not everyone was happy. Mr. Clarkson, a wealthy businessman, muttered, "This is a dangerous precedent. Next thing you know, they'll be moving into our schools." Mayor Morales fixed him with a hard stare. "Or maybe they'll finally be given the same opportunities your children already have." Jordan, overhearing, simply said, "Maybe it's time things worked differently." Dark clouds gathered, and soon rain poured down. Just as the kids huddled under a pavilion, Mrs. Whitaker, the cafe owner, called out, "Come inside. Don't just stand there." As they ran through the rain, warm cocoa awaited them. Mrs. Whitaker smiled. "My late husband was a teacher. He always said, 'A child who feels safe learns best.'" A month later, the park looked different. A new learning pavilion stood proudly, funded by donations from the city. Even Mr. Latham, the once strict park official, softened. "I was just following orders before," he admitted. Jordan grinned. Better late than never. Years passed, and Jordan's learning circle continued to grow. One day, a young man called out, "Mikey," now grown. "Guess what? I got into Westwood University's education program. I want to be a teacher." As the learning circle grew, so did its challenges. More children arrived each week, but resources were running low. Jordan found himself worried. How do we keep this going? He murmured to Emily, but Emily, ever optimistic, had an idea. "We fundraise. We bring in volunteers. We fight for this." Word spread. The learning circle became a movement. Local businesses donated books, artists painted murals, and teachers volunteered to help. Even parents who once opposed it began to see its impact. One mother who had once scoffed at the idea now sat with her child, reading aloud. "I was wrong about this," she whispered. But not everyone wanted to see change. Mr. Clarkson, the businessman, wasn't done fighting. He lobbied against the initiative, claiming the park was being misused. Suddenly, funding was threatened, and the city council planned a vote. If it didn't pass, the learning circle would be shut down. On the night of the city council vote, the community packed the hall. One by one, people spoke in support of the learning circle. Then Mikey stepped forward. He held his old Spider-Man book and said, "I used to think I didn't belong, but Mr. Carter showed me that I do. This place changed my life. Why take it away from kids like me?" The room fell silent. The vote was cast, and the learning circle won. The city granted permanent funding, ensuring that no child would ever be turned away again. Jordan wiped a tear from his eye as people cheered. Many cities stormed out, but his power over the city was fading. Love and community had triumphed. Years later, a much older Jordan sat on a park bench watching the learning circle thrive. Children laughed, books were passed around, and volunteers read aloud. Then, a familiar voice called out, "Mikey!" Now an adult and a teacher stood with a group of students. "Mr. Carter," he said with a grin, "guess what? It's my turn to teach." Jordan smiled, knowing that the story had only just begun. Kindness, love, and inclusion can change the world, just like Jesus welcomed every child. We must ensure that no one is left behind. If you believe in making a difference, share this story and help spread the message of hope.